this issue, and again, recognize when we talk about fair use, it is a defense. So it recognizes, okay, we're dealing with a copyrighted work, and in our little situation here, it would be that copyrighted photo of Janice Crumbs, but we're balancing that person's rights with the First Amendment rights of others. You know, the law was set up to try to promote First Amendment issues, First Amendment values in certain enumerated circumstances. Here again, news reporting. But again, recognize that it's a defense and proceed with caution. It's the kind of thing where there ought to be some conversation about the use of a photo in this particular circumstance. What are the issues? Can we use it? Will there be any potential exposure if we do? This next slide, without trying to spend too much time on this, when we talk about fair use defense, courts would analyze whether or not the fair use defense applies by looking at 4 factors. Now, the cases in this area have said over and over and over that not any one of these factors is any more important than the others. It essentially is a balancing test, and the court, when considering whether, if you go back, and there were no actual legal challenges in the Janice Crumbs picture situation that I'm aware of anyway, but if there was, if Crumbs decided to press a copyright infringement claim against any of the media outlets that used her photo, and the defense of fair use was claimed, you'd look at each of these factors and to try to determine whether the defense is established in that particular case. The purpose and character of the use, is the use commercial, nonprofit, or educational purposes, or again, the enumerated news reporting purpose? What's the nature of the copyrighted work? The cases say that things like tables, directory listings don't get much protection, but photos, novels, nonfiction, works of art have strong First Amendment protection. In other words, the greater the creativity, the greater the protection for the copyrighted work.
Let me just pop in here with a question, Dick. Did Janice include a copyright mark on her page, or is the copyright assumed?
You know what? She did not, and that, not that it's legally required that there be a copyrighted notice. If the importance of having the little C in a circle copyright registration is statutorily, if Janice was pursuing a claim and wanted to press the claim for statutory damages and potential punitive damages, then she'd have to show a prior registration. But even if she didn't have that prior registration, it would not prevent her from bringing a claim. But that's good, very good question. How much of the copyrighted work is used? In this case, you have a single photo. You use the photo in your news reporting. That issue seems to, and the second issue would seem to go in favor of a photographer like Janice Crumbs. Has there been any damage to the commercial value of the original? Will the new use here, the news reporting, substitute for the original in the marketplace? Well, there's really no evidence in this situation that Crumbs ever intended, for there to be some commercial marketplace. The other thing I think that that probably would balance out, and it would be the kind of discussion that a court would be very interested in, is Janice Crumbs, as we know, quickly posted this photo to TwitPic. There's at least an argument that in doing so, she was at least impliedly acknowledging or making it available for others to use. I think in today's day and age, with camera phones and just the ubiquitous nature of phones available to folks, there's a sense that if people are taking photos of something that could be newsworthy or could turn out to be an important photo, they know how to quickly negotiate licenses or authorizations for folks who may be interested in the photograph. So I think on balance, while it may be a close legal question, I think it's probably a fair bet that the news media's use of the Janice Crumbs photo in this instance was a fair use. I think the purpose of kind of going through this little exercise, though, and looking at the elements is, again, just to raise some sensitivity and awareness. Don't just assume that if it's out there posted on a Facebook page or is available online, that there may not be some issue that ought to be talked about before that photo is used. I can't tell you the number of questions that have come up in the last couple of years regarding a news media or a news station's interest in taking a photo off of Facebook. Maybe the individual is involved in a newsworthy situation, criminal activity, or whatever it might be, and you go online, there's the Facebook page, there's the photo. Typically in those situations, again, to enhance the fair use defense, assuming you can't get, or it's impractical to get authorization or permission to use the photo, if you're going to rely on fair use, oftentimes we'll suggest to the station that they do a screenshot, a wider screenshot that might show the Facebook page or a broader indication of where that photo is located online, and give some attribution to it as well in the reporting. Again, I think it just enhances the equitable nature of a fair use defense.
Another question here, what about pictures posted in Flickr or like sites labeled by individuals for reuse but are obviously from copyrighted sources?
Very good question. I think I'd go through a similar analysis, George, in that kind of a situation. I think those photo sharing sites, again, I think there is. I've not seen any cases yet, but when we media lawyers get together to talk about these kind of issues, again, the fact that they've been voluntarily posted by someone in these photo sharing sites, provides some sense that there's at least an implied permission or acknowledgement that they may be used in other circumstances. I think the fact that the group that we're talking to here in this webinar is using it for news reporting purposes, really on balance, gives you a pretty strong and compelling argument that the fair use defense is going to be made. I think it's obviously a much, much different situation if you're going on those sites, pulling those pictures to put them in a poster or an advertisement or some promotional thing, which takes it out of the news gathering realm or the news reporting realm and puts it in more of a commercial nature realm. And I hope that makes sense for folks who are thinking about these issues. Okay. We should see the fair use myth buster slide up.
Yes, sir.
Okay. This is just something I don't want to spend a lot of time on, but you hear this a lot in the area of fair use. Again, I can use 7 notes of a song without permission and call it fair use, right? Well, there really isn't any magic number. There's no specific number of words, lines, or notes that may be safely taken without permission. Every case is going to be different. Weigh the factors that we looked at before and make a determination. Obviously, from to be in a safe harbor standpoint, if you're talking about someone else's content, an article, a video or audio content that's obviously been created by someone else. If you're relying on fair use, the less in terms of the total amount that's used for your news reporting purposes, the better. Okay. All right. Still in the online world, news gathering when we're going undercover on Facebook. Just a couple of words about that. As the slide indicates here, social networks usually offer a privacy setting where posters can choose not to have their photographs or thoughts in front of the uninvited public. There's an ethical issue that certainly arises. Capturing material from a public Facebook site is different than prying behind a password-protected wall, posing as a friend. Again, I think there ought to be some conversation in the newsroom about undercover news gathering on social networking sites like Facebook and MySpace. Questions that you might want to consider when you're thinking about this is, does the poster have a reasonable expectation of privacy? What's the significance of the story? Is there any other way to get the information? I think that's something that ought to be kicked around and discussed in just about any type of a news gathering issue where there may be intrusive activity or undercover activity. And are you willing to disclose your methods of news gathering? How transparent are you willing to be when it comes to actually putting the story together and letting your listeners or your website viewers know how the story was put together? These, the legal claims that arise or potentially arise are really no different from legal implications of undercover or some investigative reporting in a traditional sense. There's really nothing specifically unique to a digital or online news gathering, other than, again, I think oftentimes people used to and experienced with asking and considering these issues in a traditional reporting sense somehow push that aside or don't even think to raise the questions when they're doing it in an internet or digital fashion. The claims are essentially one of misrepresentation or fraud, potentially, or intrusion, essentially a privacy claim when you undertake news gathering activities in this way. Okay? All right, we'll move on to some content issues, claims arising from broadcast content, primarily the defamation or libel claim. There are others, but we thought we'd focus some of our discussion today on looking at traditional defamation claim on broadcast content. When we look at it from a lawyer's standpoint, a potential defamation claim, you really break the claim down into its legal elements. And in order for someone, a plaintiff, who may want to pursue a defamation claim, they're ultimately going to be faced with having to prove or establish 5 elements: publication, identification, falsity, damages, and fault. Many of these elements will be readily apparent from the nature of the content or the nature of the medium. In this case, when we're talking about radio broadcast, it's often not going to be an issue of dispute that there's been a publication, that is, that a defamatory statement was communicated to others. Now, having said that, I had a radio defamation case a few years ago where, honestly, the plaintiff really struggled to prove an actual broadcast of the specific defamatory statement that they were alleging.